Sorry, Mr. Lee, has Ms. Franco joined?
Yes, I'm here, Consul.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing you on the screen. My apologies. We'd like to pick up from slide 172, and with dispatch, we are going to conclude the exercise today. Okay, so over to you, Ms. Franco.
Thank you, Consul. 172.
Chairman, you may proceed.
This is where we left off before the break. Slide 172 is our last slide in reference to number 18 Bosses Cove. And once again, I'm presenting a letter that my grandmother had written to the estate of Robert Horace Petty to confirm legal ownership for number 18 Bosses Cove.
Okay.
Next slide. On slide 174 refers to a lot of land on the east side of Bosses Cove, High Point Road, Pembroke Parish. As you can see on the slide presented, it is outlined in red, High Point Road. Also, you can see on the left side of the picture diagram, it says Bosses Cove Road. And you can also see the numbers along Bosses Cove Road, number 13, 11, 9, 7, and 18. You can also see the proximity of the previous presentations that I've presented for number 11, 9, 7, and 18 in reference to High Point Road. Next slide, 175. And I refer to High Point Road because it is also part of the estate of Anne Amelia Wood, which was passed on to her daughter, Grace Charlotte Phillip Oates. And in her last will and testament, she transferred the land to Charlotte Ellis Wood Wellman, my great grandmother. And then she passed it on to my late father, part of the land onto my late father, George Stanford Llewellyn Hollis, in her last will and testament. Next slide, 176. So here is a land application number 20558. Applicant, the Dallas Family Trust. This is a letter dated the 10th of March, 1992, in reference to a lot of land east side of Bosses Cove, High Point Road, Pembroke. And this is a letter from my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis, and it reads as follows. To whom it may concern, lot on east side of Bosses Cove, High Point Road, Pembroke Parish. Attached is a copy of notice of intention to develop land published in the Bermuda Royal Gazette. I, Margaret Genevieve Hollis, née Wellman, object to the proposed development of land as per application number 20558. Applicant, the Dallas Family Trust, as per the Department of Planning notice dated February 28, 1992. I question whether or not the Dallas Kappa Family Trust are in possession of a clear title deed to the property intended for development or any other properties at Bosses Cove in Pembroke Parish. I contest this development on the grounds that I hold title deed to the same property in question, and I find it difficult to believe that there is another set which could entitle the Dallas Family Trust to ownership of the same. It is not my This is not my understanding of the law in respect of title deeds. I am the niece of Miss Charlotte Oates Nee Woods, who was the daughter of Richard and Anne Amelia George Woods. As per the deeds I'm holding on the inlet on both the east and south side, the east and southwest side of Boss's Cove, long before the government planning department came into existence, and registration of land prior to the planning department was made with the parish vestry. The meeting was held during the time of Dr. Masters, who at that time held a position similar to the Minister of Planning, when I disputed the same claim to the property made by the Kappas. I have a copy of papers that the Kappas have drawn up by a local law firm in order to prove title. These documents are not the title deeds. I would like for you to solicit the Dallas Family Trust to produce their deeds in order for them to prove clear title to the property they intend to develop, and I am prepared to do likewise. I place an ad in the Royal Gazette dated August 16th, 19th, asking that anyone claim title to property at Boss's Cove, Places Point, or Burnt House to dispute it at that time. But to my knowledge, there has not been any reply. Signed, M. Genevieve Hollis, my great-grandmother.
You have the original, well, a copy of this letter, madam, a hard copy.
Yes, Counsel.
Going to ask you, well, as I indicated, I keep repeating, any document that you is embedded within Exhibit VF5, but which you are placing reliance on, and because of physical distance, sin that we are now practicing, we're not able to physically take the document from you. I'm going to ask you at the earliest opportunity to share it with the commission. So you could just keep putting them aside from me.
Yes, Counsel.
So this is your grandmother writing?
Yes.
Correct.
Mrs. Margaret Genevieve Hollis, Nee Wellman.
Thank you. You may proceed, ma'am.
Slide 177. Here is a copy of the notice intention to develop land dated the 28th of February,
1993.
It should be say 1992. Next slide.
I'm sorry, could you you're saying that should be 1992 and not 1993?
The notice says 1992, but my typing says 1993.
Where does the typing say 1992?
At the bottom of the notice.
Okay, I'm not seeing it clearly. I see February and
It says the 28th of February, 1992.
okay. So exhibit VF5 on the left-hand side of slide 177, where the year 1993 appears, it ought properly to be 1992.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Slide 178. This is a letter dated the 16th of April, 1992 to the Department of Planning. Read the land application number 20558, applicant, the Dallas Family Trust, written by my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis, to the Department of Planning, and it reads as such. In reference to recent correspondence received, I would like to inform you that I further object to the above mentioned application. If you require any further information, I can be contacted at the above mentioned address and telephone number. Thanking you in advance and waiting your reply. Yours sincerely, M. Genevieve Hollis. And funny enough, Counsel, this is signed by myself back in 1992 on behalf of my grandmother.
And why did you sign it on her behalf?
Because I wrote the letter on her behalf and she wanted me to submit it on her behalf.
Your grandmother can you remind me, when did she pass?
I can't remember.
I'm just trying to understand. Well, it's a normal request for a grandmother to make of a granddaughter. I'm just trying to understand why on this occasion she asked you to write this one. And
Because I was assisting her at the time in doing the research.
okay,
I have been assisting her for many years in collecting research or finding out information on her behalf.
okay.
Next slide, 179. This is a slide 179. This is a certified copy from the Registrar General's office dated to 24th of January, 1973 for deed of release dated 8th of February, 1936 between William Thomas Francis Kappa, Eugene George Kappa, and Amelia Kappa, Joseph Kappa, Mary Elizabeth Petty, John Henry Kappa, and Joseph Birch Shorewood.
Thank you. And this document, where at this reference on slide 179, where did you obtain this document, madam?
This was a document that was part of the information that my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis, had collected over the years.
Thank you.
This document is dated the 24th of January, 1973. Next slide, please. This indenture made the 8th day of February, 1936, between William Thomas Francis Kappa of Pembroke Parish in the island of Bermuda of the first part, Eugene George Kappa, Amelia Kappa, Joseph Kappa, Mary Elizabeth Petty, and John Henry Kappa, all of the second part, and the Joseph Birch Shorewood of the third part. In a previous presentation, I mentioned that Joseph Birch Shorewood had sold property to Edmund Gibbons, I think it's the name. I will correct that in a few minutes. And so before he did that, the Kappas had taken out a Supreme Court case against Joseph Birch Shorewood in reference to ownership of property. And this is the indenture that I'm about to present to give you a bit of background history. I'm going to start with, whereas in an action pending in the Supreme Court of Bermuda, number 19.
Sorry, where are you reading from?
I'm reading from the middle section of the indenture where it says.
Yes, you have to tell us where you're reading from and the line and all that.
I am reading from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 8th line, which says, whereas in an action pending in the Supreme Court of Bermuda, number 19 of 1935, in which the said Joseph Birch Shorewood is plaintiff and the said William Thomas Francis Kappa is defendant. The said plaintiff claimed damages and an injunction in respect of acts of trespass committed by the defendant upon the lands of the plaintiff hereinafter described, and whereas the said William Thomas Francis Kappa claimed to have committed the act on behalf of himself and the parties hereto of the second part, other persons entitled to the real estate of the late Peter Capper, his father, and under the mistaken belief that the deceased was entitled to portions of the said lands, and whereas the said Joseph Burt Shorework claimed certain other lands hereinafter mentioned lying to the west of the tract of land hereinafter particularly described, which said lands are also claimed by the parties hereto of the first and second parts, and whereas the said William Thomas Francis Capper has agreed to confess judgment in the said action for the purpose of settling the dispute. The parties hereto have agreed to execute the mutual releases and covenants hereinafter contained. Now this indentured witness that in pursuance of the said agreement and in consideration of the premises, the parties hereto of the first and second parts respectively do hereby release and renounce unto and to the use of the said Joseph Burt Shorewood, his heirs, and assign all rights, title, interest, claim, and demand whatsoever into that certain tract of land situated in Pembroke Parish, delineated on the plan hereto annexed and thereon, and the said islands, call it red, containing by an estimation 38 acres or thereabouts, and bounded northerly part by the public roads leading to Admiralty landings at Spanish Point, particularly by lands respectively of the Admiralty of the Roman Catholic Church of Kenneth Simmons, Frank Simmons, Albert Dallas, Manuel Soares, Joseph Soares, Miss Cabral, easterly by lands formerly of the said Peter Capper and of Miss Oates, southerly partly by the waters of Bosses Cove, partly by the point of land known as Oxford, and partly by the waters of the Great Sound, and westerly by the lands known as the Cricket Field and the Burnt House, separated therefrom for the greater part by a stone wall, as shown on the said plan, and also all that islands situated in Bosses Cove are for said to the south of the said tract of land, and to the east of the said point known as Oxford, and the said parties hereto of the first and second parts do hereby for themselves their respective heirs, executors, and administrators jointly and severally covenant with the said Joseph Burt Shorewood, his heirs, and assign that they, the said covenanting persons, respectively, and all other persons lawfully or equally claiming from or under them, respectively, or from or under the said Peter Capper, shall and will from time to time and all times thereafter execute all such further assurance as shall be reasonably required for more effectively releasing and renouncing all claims whatsoever to the said herdiments hereinbefore particularly described, or any part or parts thereof. And this indenture further witness that in consideration of the premise that the said Joseph Burt Shorewood doth hereby release and renounce unto and to the use of the said parties hereto of the first and second part, their heirs, and assigns all rights, title, interest, claim, and demand whatsoever in and to all those lands known as the Cricket Field and Burnt House, and the islands, and the lands situated between the said last mentioned lands and the waters of the Great Sound. All of these lands lie to the west of the said tract of land hereinbefore particularly described, and also that from and after judgment in the said action shall have been confessed by or on behalf of the said William Thomas Francis Capper, duly entered of record in the said court, that the said Joseph Burt Shorewood shall release that the said William Thomas Francis Capper from all claims for damages arising out of the act complained of therein or otherwise relating to the said island, and also from all costs of the said Joseph Brett Shorewood in the said action. And it is hereby agreed and declared that for the purpose of enforcing and further effectuating the settlement of the said dispute in accordance with the provisions. Next slide, please.
No, you read all of that, but what's the point you make in relation to reading all of that?
The point that I'm making, Council, is that the estate of the Kappas, they claim that they own land in Boss's Cove, a High Point Road, and they took out a Supreme Court action against Joseph Brett Shorewood. And then in the end, they realized that their claim was.
Well, before you go there, in terms of what they realized.
It's stated in the document here that they, that their claim was false, and Joseph Brett Shorewood, as I just read, he relinquished them of any cost in reference to this, the claim that they were, the Supreme Court claim that they were making.
So the slide 180 is what you're using to substantiate all of that.
Yes, Council.
Okay. Now on slide 181, your land is Registrar General's office document for what purpose?
So this slide 181, just a minute. Okay, so this is a document of the land that that the estate of the Kappas said that they were entitled to claiming.
Sorry, could you repeat that for me?
This, the Registry's General Office.
Yes.
Document is a certified copy of the estate of the late Peter Kappa, Spanish Point properties, North Shore property, Boss's Cove properties in particular, Tula Valley properties. This is the.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you. You're saying that slide 181 gives a description of 3 properties?
Right, and in particular, the Boss's Cove properties, which that they have claimed to. And this is how the Boss's Cove properties were to be divided or passed on to other family members.
And you're just using this slide to highlight not just what is being done, but what has been done in circumstances with your family's land.
That's correct, Council.
Okay, so you're just showing us a pattern in terms of what has happened and who's involved.
Yes, Council.
Okay.
Next slide. And this is just a continuation of the estate of the late Peter Kappa and how the properties and the areas were divvied up. I would like to bring attention to, on this page, on line 7, where it says, in some cases, the name Kappa, C-H-I-A-P-P-A, was also spelled C-A-P-P-E-R.
Okay. C-I-P-P-E-R.
C-H-I-A-P-P-A was also C-A-P-P-E-R on some documents.
Thank you.
Next slide. Actually, you can go to slide. We can fast forward to slide 188. On this slide, on the far right, where it says the 13th schedule, these are the names of how the property was divided between the family members. And just for reference,
And when you the family, which family members?
the Petty Capper family. So these are the families that benefit from the transfer of land in the Bosses Cove area.
And what's the source of this document?
This document was also part of my grandmother's research.
Thank you. You go to the next slide.
And this just shows the signatures of persons that signed off on properties being transferred. But I would like to read the last part where it says note, halfway down the page.
Yes. Please remember all these documents in hard copy must be shared with the Commission of Inquiry, Secretariat.
Yes, Council.
Yes, you may go ahead. Slide
And-
189.
And it says, note, since the date of the above written indenture, namely on the 21st day of January 1938, the Supreme Court of Bermuda has rendered a decision as to the construction of the will of John Peter Capper, in part recited in the same indenture, whereby it would appear, although the decision is a vague term, that the devise of real estate to the 7 children therein named did not extend to the lots of parcels of land, hardiments, and premises from which the subject matter of the said indenture. Consequently, that the execution of the said indenture for the said 7 children as such named devise has become unnecessary, dated the 22nd of January, 1938. And this was recorded the 9th of February, 1937, a year plus later. And on the side, it says, judgment canceled since judgment of the 8th of July, 1944, page 223, book of considered judgment. And I guess that's someone's initial. I would like to say at this point, further investigation on my part, that in 1944, and this is when the Petty Capper family start transferring property into their names via the parish vestries. Even though Joseph Bradshaw Ward established that they didn't have proper ownership and title to the property.
Thank you.
Based on the Supreme Court notice that was taken out by the Capper family initially. And that ends this section. Okay. Before we proceed to number 16, Places Point, Pembroke, Council, I would like to read from the additional information that I had submitted a while back. There was a second part presentation that refers to Places Point Road, Pembroke.
Okay. That document you wish to refer to,
I submitted it run about the night, sorry.
what I'm going, go ahead. What I'm going to suggest that you do in relation to that document, you could just take us to the points. That document, I'm told, that document is 95 pages, I'm told.
It is, but it's refers to Places Point,
Right.
which has some information that will lead up to this presentation of 16
Right.
Places Point Road.
Right. So because what we're going to do, we're going to not just endeavor, we're going to complete in this session everything. So
Yes.
what I'm going to ask you to do is just take us to the pertinent points.
Okay.
The rest of the document, I will commend to the commissioners to read in terms of making their determination or any determination whatsoever.
Sure.
But you're going to take us to the pertinent points.
Okay.
Yeah. Just one moment, please. You submitted this document on the 16th of March,
Yes, Council.
and it has the title Legacy Additional Information,
Yes, Council.
and it consists of how many pages? Plus 125.
100, and I'm not going to refer to all the pages. 100.
No, and I appreciate it, but in terms of the document, because the commissioners will read the rest of it, but I just need to know for the purposes of the exercise. It's just to repeat, Chairman, it has a title Legacy Additional Information. It was sent to the Secretariat. Legacy Additional Information. It was received by the Secretariat on the 16th of March, 2021. It consists of 125 pages, and we won't be going through them, Chairman, but I'd ask that it is 10, well, at this time, I'd ask that it be 10 admitted as Exhibit VF 19. Ask you to turn on your microphone, Chairman.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, thank you. Good. Council, you made a request that
Yes, I'm asking that
document,
yes, Chairman.
that a document submitted 16th of March 2021 from the claimant consisting of 125 pages, titled Legacy Additional Information, that be recorded as Exhibit VF 19. Is
Thank you very much.
that correct, Council?
It is correct, Chairman.
Yes. So done.
Thank you. Could you just take us to the pertinent parts? And as I indicated, the commissioners will avail themselves of reading the entire document.
Sure. Thank you, Council. We can start on page 81.
Just going to ask you to allow so just to understand before we are taken to this document, the exhibit VF5, you're finished with that document.
For now,
Oh, okay, we're just trying to add because we're going to, as I say, we're going to complete all of this in the
yes,
next time. So I just want to, you had for VF5, you had stopped at slide 188, but
yes,
you're now taking us to VF19 and you wish us to go to page 88, you said?
page 81.
81. Okay, I'm just going to allow the secretary just to go to it. Yes, please proceed, ma'am.
Okay. So this is a map of plan of land by Clark and Deutsch dated July 1963. As you see, the area marked out in dark red, it shows the estate of Charlotte Oaks and Bosses Cove. But this is also a plan of land of Shorewood Park, Shorewood property, Shorewood development. And so this is what it looked like in 1963. Next slide. Actually, can you go back to that slide? I just want to point out something. At the top of this plan, you will see a row of houses that go straight across at the top of the plan. And so back in let me just get the correct date. Back in 1952 to 1963, the Bermuda government rezoned this area. So the rows of houses along the top, which was called Seagull Road, Seagull Lane, I'm sorry, Stovall's Bay Road, that was not included when the government rezoned this property from residential 1 to residential 2. And when they did that, they also included Places Point, which is on the far left bottom part of this diagram.
Thank you.
Next slide. The area outlined in blue is Places Point.
Sorry, just for the record, what number slide is this?
This is number 82 of BF 19.
Thank you.
So in the, as on the far left, the area outlined in blue is Places Point, which I will elaborate further in my presentation.
Okay.
You can understand in proximity Places Point, which was Bermuda government to be residential 1. The other part of the plan, which is outlined in red of all the different residential next slide.
This is now slide number
84.
83, 84.
84. This is the list of zoning by the Bermuda government between 1952 and 1963. And Shorework Park area / Places Point is zone 13. On this document, next page is a 2-page document. And at the top, zone 10 is the Shorework Park, which is not outlined, but it's at the very top, number 10, Shorework Park, Pembroke zoning order, 1956, 38 acres. And for Places Point, zone 13, it only refers to 6 acres of Places Point. And Places Point is far greater than 6 acres, but it only refers to 6 acres.
And you make that point to say what, madam?
To say that that there were other properties in this area which surpasses 6 acres, but the zoning of Places Point was only for 6 acres, and I will clarify that in another presentation.
Okay.
In reference to number 16 and 18 of Places Point.
Okay.
We can fast forward to page 88 of VF 19.
Could you repeat that for me? VF 19, what page?
Page 88.
Page 88. Slide 88. Thank you. Yes, proceed, madam.
On this Pembroke Parish map that was dated October 16, 1937 by the assistant surveyor.
Sorry, could you assist us? Your note says 36. Are you saying 37 or 36? The note on the left.
This map was dated the 16th of 1936.
Yes, what you just said, 1937.
Okay, sorry. By assistant surveyor Robert H. Clark. And the red circle on the far left is Places Point. And the red circle on the right is the Bosses Cove area, and in between is Shorework Park Hills, Shorework Park Development, whichever you want to call it, just so that you can see the proximity of the land between Bosses Cove and Places Point. Next slide, 89. So this slide shows aerial views ranging from 1941 to 2012 of Places Point. And as you can see over the years, the property has become developed. So in 1941, there was more arable land versus in 2012, it shows, 2003 and 2012, it shows that it was more developed with properties.
Thank you.
Next slide. And this is just another comparison of Places Point and how the land was subdivided in 1956 by through the zoning of Places Point to be part of residential 1 and not residential 2 when it was rezoned. The diagram on the far left in the neon green, that is the area of the 6 acres that was rezoned. And as you could see, it was not the whole of Places Point that was rezoned.
I'm not sure if I heard this bit of evidence before, but can you share with us? You mentioned rezoning of 6 acres, but what is the total acreage based on your understanding?
Council, I don't know the total acreage, but it's not 6 acres. It's more than 6 acres.
And why do you assume it's more than 6?
Because there are at least 1, 2, 3, 4. at least six or more properties, residential homes that have not been included in this 6 acres of rezoning.
Okay,
Size.
all right, thank you.
Next slide. Okay, this is the
Slide 91.
slide 90. Slide 91. This
Yes, continue.
This is the official notice of rezoning of Places Point property, Pembroke zoning order 1956. And it basically says that it will rezone 6 acres of land in this particular area from residential 2 to residential 1. And if we fast forward to 95, slide 95. Here on the schedule, as I've highlighted in yellow, it says all that lot of land situated in Pembroke Parish, known as Places Point Pembroke, containing about 6 acres, bounded on the north by waters of Stubble Bay, of the south of waters of Great Sound. So this is here where they've only rezoned 6 acres of Places Point. And it also further outlines the properties in which it was bounded by. I will continue. South by waters of Great Sound on the east, partly by lands known now or formerly in possession of James Benson Ferguson and Catherine McLean Ferguson, partly by land now or formerly in possession of J. Benson Ferguson, and partly by land now or formerly in possession of Gerald Reynolds Frith and Florence May Frith, and on the west, partly by waters of Great Sound, partly by land now or formerly in the possession of Albert W. Jones, partly by land now or formerly in the possession of Gerald Nathaniel Saunders, and partly by land now or formerly in possession of Newbold Smith, and partly by land now or formerly in possession of the estate of James Nelson. And this came into effect 3rd of July, 1956. Signed off on by His Excellency the Governor and Council the 18th day of July, 1956.
Now, what's the general point that you make here in terms of the zoning, rezoning of this area and how it touches and concerns your claim?
The rezoning was done for only 6 acres, and in reference to my presentation later of 16 and 18 Places Point refers only to 6 acres of Places Point. It does not take into consideration all the other land in Places Point owned by other persons.
Thank you.
Next slide. So based on some research that I've done, this is a letter dated the 4th of July, 1956 to the Honorable Colonial Secretary. And it's basically saying attached 10 copies of proposed zoning of the land known as Places Point, 3 copies before the legislature. So this is where they started to rezone the land back in 1956. And the next 2 slides will be very brief. It will just show you how the notices went into the paper and to make it public. Next slide, 97. So this notice represents Warwick Park, Warwick, and Places Point, Pembroke. So back then, If you didn't know that there were two Places Point, there was a Places Point in Sands and there's a Places Point in Pembroke, you may not, you might have thought that this didn't concern you, especially if you had a dispute with the land in question at that time. Next slide. On this
98.
98, correct. On this slide, zoning of Places Point outlined in red on the far right. And so this basically says that when it was approved, and I would like to read something from this slide. Basically, this slide says that Places Point zoning order was agreed to by the House of Assembly yesterday, and this was dated the Royal Gazette Tuesday.
Where are you reading? Where are you reading from, Ms. Franklin?
The part that's outlined in red.
Okay. Sorry, we are not seeing it clearly. Well, I am not seeing it clearly. I know the commissioners have the documents, but I'm not seeing it clear. But please proceed. Once the commissioners can see, that's fine. But just a reminder, all these documents that Reliance is being placed, we need the hard copies of them.
Yes, Council. So zoning of Places Point approved, Royal Gazette, Tuesday, October 23, 1956. And it states, the Places Point zoning order was agreed to by the House of Assembly yesterday. While the House was in committee, Mr. R.L. Pearman said, it seems to him the ownership of the property was under debate. He asked, what would happen if the property was zoned and when then discovered the present owner had a bad title to it? The Honorable H.D. Butterfield, Chairman of the Board and Works and member in charge, replied, I am given to understand it would make no difference at all. If the House passes a zoning order, the property is zoned. Earlier, Mr. Butterfield said that the order was approved by the Works Department and the Building Authority, and that the zoning was being done at the request of the owners of Places Point. That's who the owners were, of Places Point. And I think the more of these various types of things we get zoned, the better off we will be, Mr. Butterfield said.
Thank you.
And this was in the Royal Gazette, Tuesday, October 23, 1956.
Tuesday, October
23rd, 1956.
Thank you.
Next slide, 1999. And this is the order that I just read.
Okay, so we can move to the slide one, to the next slide then.
Yes, slide 100. Next slide, this is just reiterating the zoning of Places Point. And for, as I mentioned earlier, there were two Places Point. One was in Somerset. So this is just an act stating that a Royal Gazette Colonist Daily dated January 2nd, 1945, which shows Places Point, Spanish Point on the left, and then Places Point in Somerset on the right.
So for the avoidance of doubt, the Places Point that you refer to is in which parish?
Pembroke Parish. Spanish Point, Pembroke Parish.
Thank you.
Next slide, 101, sorry. And this is just for continuity that there were two Places Point, one in Somerset and one in Pembroke Parish. Next slide. so here I begin my presentation on Places Point. Zoning ZO13 is the new zoning order that was given to it by the Department of Planning. Next slide. Of the 6 acres of the rezoning of Places Point, here are the properties in question that was part of those 6 acres.
When you say in question, meaning what?
The 6 acres that was rezoned, these are the properties here that was in that particular 6 acres of zoning.
Okay, so you're on slide 104, and you mentioned earlier that there are a number of properties that are not included in the 6 acres, but here on slide 104, you're just showing us, based on your presentation, what is within the 6 acres.
That's correct, Council.
Okay. And what is your concern about these? Do you have any, in terms of your claim, are you claiming anything in relation to these properties within the zone?
Yes, Council, I am claiming that this 6 acres is part of the property that was owned by my family, even though they all have, it was at one point in time, this was one plot of land, which has been divided. The 6 acres has been divided to have all these individual holdings on it.
Okay.
Next.
You may proceed.
Slide 105. This slide is a note from my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis, a letter to Mr. S. Rattery, Ministry of Planning, John W. Swan Building, Victoria Street, Hamilton, dated to 29th of June, 17. Hold on.
I'm sorry. Just a moment. What I'm seeing on the screen is a letter from a lawyer's office.
Yes.
Even though you make reference to your grandmother's document, I'm not seeing that.
Hold on. Okay, sorry, that shouldn't be there. Yeah, it is the Madeiras Law Office letter. My grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis, August 20th, 1975.
So in respect of exhibit VF 19 at slide 105,
Yes,
the document here on that letterhead of that law firm, you wish that removed from the exhibit?
no, the letter stays the same. The part that I typed in is incorrect.
Which is what?
Note from my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis.
Okay, so you wish to, where it's that notes ending 1798, you wish all of that to be removed?
That's correct.
And just make a note of it, please. Chairman, just by way of note, so when the commissioners are reviewing the exhibit for consideration, the witness is now indicating that on slide 104, the words that appear under our family legacy zoning of Places Point, beginning notes from and ending 1798, that those be removed from the exhibit.
Yes, Council, if you wish to repeat that for clarity, but I'm noting that you want that to be altered. You want that?
Witnesses indicating that in respect to slide 104,
Yes.
where the words appear in typed format, notes from my grandmother, and it ends in June 29, 1798. The witness is asking that those notes be removed from the exhibit VF19 because they are properly not to be here, Chairman.
So noted, Council.
Please continue, ma'am. Just to remind you, we have 1 hour to complete everything today, madam.
Yes, yes. So this is a letter from Madera's Law Office dated August 20th, 1975, to my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis. Says, dear Ms. Hollis, enclosed is a photostat of a notice put in the Word Gazette on Saturday, August 16th.
Sorry, I'm stopping you again. Where is this letter you're reading from now? Where is that?
The letter on the far right.
Okay, okay. Go ahead. Continue. Continue. Continue.
These offices represent a client who has purchased a lot at Places Point. We are prepared to discuss the title of our client's property and show evidence thereof. If you are prepared to show the alleged title of Ms. Charlotte Ellis Wood Wellman, it would be appreciated if you could contact these office and make an appointment to see our Mr. Medeiros. Thank you, signed Madera's Law Office. So this is in reference to the notice in the Word Gazette stating that contesting the ownership of Places Point by my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis.
The document makes reference to a photo stat of, sorry, could you just enlarge it for me, please?
A photostat copy of a notice in the Word Gazette on Saturday, August 16th, 19.
Yeah, what is that relating to? What is that referring to?
It's relating to a notice in the Word Gazette on Saturday, August 16th, to say that she is contesting. I don't know what it was. I don't have a copy of it.
Okay, well, let's not speculate then. Okay.
Next page, next slide, 106. So this is a letter on the far right, Peter J. Smith's office to the Department of Planning, but it's a letter dated, this is in reference to Places Point, Pembroke 6 acres only. It's a letter dated the 19th of April, 1990, from Peter Smith to the Department of Planning, reference to lot 12 of Places Point, which was part of the rezoning order 1956. Planning number 19365, which is now number 16 Places Point Road. I will read this letter as such. It's attention to Department of Planning. It says, dear sirs, lot 12 of Places Point, planning number 19365. If you was to bring up the planning department's map and type in 13965, there should be reference to number 16 Places Point. And in reference, it says, I refer to my certificate of title forward to you in relation to lot 12 of Places Point Road, Pembroke zoning order 1956, to the effect that it is a single lot. The title to the lot is as follows. It is believed that Jeanette Margaret Davison was during her lifetime and the time of her decease seized of the whole of the Places Point property. Jeanette Margaret Davison duly made and executed her last will and testament dated the 7th day of August, 1946, and thereby gave the residence of her real and personal estate unto her niece, Mary Grace Scorantino. Jeanette Margaret Davison died on the 24th of October, 1947, and her will and was duly admitted to probate in the High Court of Justice in London, England, on the 10th day of March, 1948. The English grant of probate was resealed in Bermuda on the 5th day of March, 1949, and was recorded in the Registry of the Supreme Court. By conveyance dated the 20th July, 1952, and made before Grace Scorantino of the one part and Thomas Ivan Llewellyn Reese of the other part. Grace Scorantino did grant and release the whole of the Places Point property delineated and outlined on the plan C3954 dated the 30th of March, 1952, prepared by Robert H. Clark unto and to the use of the said Thomas Ivan Llewellyn Reese. The total area of the Places Point was 6 acres, 1 rod, and 21 perches of, or 6.38 acres.
And you refer to this document to say what, madam?
I am referring to say that in 1956, when the zoning order of was done, it only referred to the 6 acres, and this is the 6 acres that it referred to.
Okay. I just ask you the very important question, however, but based on your earlier answer, I'm not sure how much you can assist. You're making reference to, even though this document speaking to 6 acres, but you don't know how much more than 6 acres was owned by your family.
No, my family only owned the 6 acres that I'm referring to.
Well, you refer to rezone, sorry, I'm sorry. You refer to a rezoning exercise. That's
Yes.
okay. Okay. It's a rezone exercise. Okay, proceed.
Yes. Next slide, please.
Slide 107.
107, which is a continuation of the letter. It says the Places Point property, Pembroke zoning order 1956, SRO 24-1956 was made, which includes lots 11 and 12 of the Places Point development and part of the property conveyed by the deed dated the 20th of July, 1952. Thomas Ivan Llewellyn Reese duly made and executed his last will and testament dated the 26th of May, 1956, and thereby devised as all his real estate unto Violet Muriel Reese absolute. Number 8, Thomas Ivan Llewellyn Reese died on the 30th of October, 1966. Sorry, I'm just going back to number 7. It says Thomas Ivan Llewellyn Reese duly made and executed his last will and testament dated the 26th of May, 1956. Okay, sorry, I was just a bit confused with dates. So number 8, Thomas Ivan Llewellyn Reese died on the 30th of October, 1966, without having revoked or otherwise altered his said will, which was proved in the Supreme Court of the Bahamas Islands and has made resealed in the Supreme Court of Bermuda and has been recorded in the Office of the Registry General dated in Book of Deeds, number 96 at page 10. An indenture of conveyance dated the 31st of December, 1970, Violet Marie Reese conveyed lots 4, 11, 12, and 13 of the Places Point development to Kenneth Edgar Simmons and Ingrid Alpha Caroline Simmons as joint tenants. Number 10, on the 20th of July, 1952, Thomas Ivan Llewellyn Reese took possession of the whole of Places Point property, which was zoned in 1956. Number 11, on the 22nd of June, 1988, Mr. Robert H. Clark wrote to me a letter, and a copy of the said letter is enclosed herewith. I don't have a copy of that letter. Number 12, lots 12 has been in the possession of the Reese family from 1952 until 1979, and thereafter has been in the possession of Mr. and Mrs. Simmons, and both of which possessions have been in accordance with the title deeds. The letter of the 22nd of June, 1988 from Mr. Robert H. Clark clearly shows that the claim of other persons to the waterfront of Lot 12 is a spurious claim and should be ignored. I invite you to accept the fact that the whole of lots 11 and 12 are owned by Mr. and Mrs. Simmons as single lots pursuant to the Places Point property Pembroke zoning area of 1956 and in accordance with the title deeds. Yours faithfully, Peter J.C. Smith.
What's the purpose of placing reliance on this document, Ms. Franco?
My reliance on this document, it states, it clearly states in number 12 that Mr. and Mrs. Simmons are in possession of the title deed to this property.
Yes, and still, I'm just taking you back to direct us to the relevance to your claim.
And my claim is that my family owned this property and still own this property.
Thank you.
Next slide, 108. This slide just shows that Margaret Davison died the 24th of October, 1947. And this is her notice in the Royal Gazette.
Okay, and importantly, Miss Davison is in, Janet Margaret Davison is in any way connected to you, is she?
No, no, Counsel.
But you're just showing one of the parties who was to the transaction, what has become of her.
Yes, Counsel, that she said that she owned this property and that on her death, it was conveyed to her niece and then it was sold to Mr. Reese and now it's in the possession of the Mr. and Mrs. Simmons family.
Thank you. Take us to the next slide, please.
We will fast forward to slide 112. And here's the notice of in the Royal Gazette dated Saturday, August 23, 1952, whereas Mrs. Mabel Grace Scorantino conveyed the property to Thomas Ivan Llewellyn Reese. My concern with this notice, it says Mabel Grace, but her real name was Mary Grace. So here it is a either a typo or an intentional of the name. Next slide.
Slide 113.
113. So this is a Pembroke Vestry property transfer particulars. And it is transferring the estate of, here it says transferring the estate of James Davison, which also refers to the estate of Jeanette Margaret Davison, who in her last will and testament conveyed the property to Mary Grace Scorantino, her niece. So her name is not even mentioned on here, who was at that time supposed to be the rightful owner of the property. And is saying that it was transferred by purchase to Thomas Ivor Llewellyn Reese.
Okay.
Next slide. We'll go to slide 115, the next slide.
Seems very repeating.
Yes, and this slide just shows you the outline of the 6 acres that was conveyed and then sold to Thomas Ivor Llewellyn Reese on the 20th of July, 1956. Next slide, 116. And this is just two diagrams showing the same area. Basically, the one on the right in the yellow is the 6 acres that was conveyed. For clarification. Slide 117. And here is a a notice of intention to develop by Colin Reese. Spanish Point, Pembroke, a hangar and apartment, zoning order number 13. This was part of the articles that was handed to me that my grandmother had collected.
Thank you.
And this ends my presentation as for this part of Places Point and the rezoning of Places Point. If we can refer back to the original presentation and start at the page that we finished off at 188.
We wish to return to exhibit VF5
Yes, that's
at
correct.
slide 88
188.
as we go down the back stretch and head towards the
191, sorry, right there.
enclosure.
Okay, 16 Places Point Road. There are one resident, two separate dwellings, the main house and apartments. Outlined in the red is number 16 Places Point. And just a bit of a history in reference to number 16 Places Point. This property is a part of the estate of Richard Wood, who was my great-great-great-grandfather. And he lived at Places Point with his wife, Nancy Wood, who was his first wife. She was an invalid. She died in the house. She died in the house fire at Places Point. After the house fire, the property was never rebuilt or redeveloped. It was called Burnt House. On some of the older maps that was produced by Mr. Savage, it shows that it outlines Burnt House on his map. Richard Wood considered this the resting place of his wife, Nancy. So he left Places Point and went to number 11 Bosses Cove, where he lived with his second wife, Anne Amelia Wood. They are the parents of Grace Charlotte Philip Oates Wood. Before buildings were erected on the entire Places Point, Burnt House Point to Shorework Park, Spanish Point, Pembroke, Mr. Kenneth Simmons and others of the Admiralty of the Roman Catholic Church of Kenneth Simmons, Frank Simmons, Albert Dallas, Manuel Soares, Joseph Soares, and Mrs. Cabral said.
I'm not sure I'm understanding that sentence. Before buildings were built, what's the connection to the persons in the second line?
There was absolutely this property was not developed until later in the 1940s, and this property was owned by Mr. Kenneth Simmons and others of the Admiralty of the Roman Catholic Church of Kenneth Simmons, Frank Simmons, Albert Dallas, Manuel Soares, Joseph Soares, and Miss Cabral.
Okay. Yes, go to the next slide first.
Slide. On this slide, you could see on the far left, the map by Mr. Savage, that it shows you by Tormwood's Bay Burnt House. So that is the area in which Richard Wood had lived with his wife, his first wife, and it became Burnt House because of the house burning down.
You referenced Mr. Savage's map, but could you direct me to the Burnt House area you're making reference to on the map?
Yes, so if you look on the far left where it says Tormwood's Bay, you'll see Peter Tucker Bay, Places Point, and then if you come round closer, as you get to Blocks Point, there's a little bay inlet called Tormwood's Bay.
Yes.
And then right next to Tormwood's Bay on the left, there's two words, Burnt House.
Okay.
So Burnt House this part of this map was actually part of Shorewood, but then when they rezoned it, so,
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's fine.
okay,
We just need to pick up to complete.
next slide. 195, 195, please. Okay, so this is the Registry General's land title, land transfer dated to 27th of June, 2003. With transfer notice schedule, plan of number 12 Places Point to Kenneth Edgar Simmons, Bruce Fraser Wilkie as trustees of the GL Simmons Family Trust, from Kenneth Edgar Simmons to Kenneth Edgar Simmons and Ingrid Alpha Caroline Simmons, dated of acquisition the February 13, 2003. So this is where the property was transferred from one person to another in the Kenneth Simmons family.
Okay.
196. And this is the schedule attached to the transfer. And it refers to the property in question of number 16 Places Point Road.
Thank you.
I also came across some information, additional resource information, that in the 3rd of October, 1931, Kenneth Simmons and Julia Constance Simmons, his wife, had a mortgage on a property in Spanish Point. It is not clear exactly if it's number 16, but from what I'm reading, the description is somewhat similar to number 16. So even though this says 2003, they owned the property as way back as October 5th, 1931. The lawyer firm for the property was Gray and Smith.
Thank you.
Next slide.
On 97.
This is just a outline, the plan of the land in question for number 16. Next slide. And sorry, that's the duplicate slide. We'll go to slide number 200. And this one is dated the 25th of August, 2003. Scheduled with two plans of plot. Number 16 Places Point to Ingrid Alpha Caroline Simmons as life tenants, Kenneth Edgar Simmons and Bruce Wilkie Fraser as trustee of the GL Simmons Trust family, from Kenneth Edgar Simmons and Ingrid Alpha Caroline Simmons, dated November 19, 2002. So this is basically just transferring it from Kenneth Simmons and his wife and others to a trust, the Bruce Fraser Wilkie Trust, on behalf of the GL Simmons family. And on the far left is outlined in red is number 16 Places Point. And they purchased this property for $150,000. Oh, sorry, $881,400.
Okay, just before we go any further, Secretary, could you just advise me whether or not this trustee of the GL Simmons Family Trust, whether or not an adverse notice had been sent to them?
I can advise that Kenneth Edgar Simmons has been advised, but Bruce, he has not.
Sorry, could you repeat that? But he has not responded. I'm not sure following you.
Kenneth Edgar Simmons has received an adverse notice.
Okay.
Bruce Wilkie has not received an adverse notice. No order was given for Bruce Fraser Wilkie.
Okay, thank you. You just take us back to the document, please.
Okay, we will go to the next slide, 201.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, in the bracket it refers to trustees of GL Simmons Family Trust. Properly speaking, if a notice should go to all the trustees, it appears from all indication that only one of the trustees had been notified. I'm just asking, just for ease of reference, that all the trustees of the GL Simmons Family Trust could be notified.
Yes, you're wishing that an order be made for the adverse notice to be sent to the entire GL Simmons Trust.
Thank you.
All of the trustees. That's granted.
You may proceed, Ms. Franco.
Slide 201. This is the transfer notice for the Registry General dated the 13th of February, which I just read, and it was signed.
What year?
2003.
Thank you.
And it was.
And this is just showing once again the transfer of the property and the registration of it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
202, next slide. And this is the last slide for number 16, Places Place. It just shows you again the property in question at number 16, Places Place.
Okay.
And slide 204. This refers to number 18, Places Place. Even though the assessment number says number 16, Places Place, I will clarify that in a minute. Next slide, 205. The Registry General's land transfer dated the 3rd of September 2003 refers to transfer schedule plan of number 12, Places Point to Bruce Fraser Wilkie and trustee of the GL Simmons Trust, and Kenneth Edgar Simmons and Alpha Caroline Simmons dated to June 25th, 2002. And this will be clarified on the next slide. Okay. So this slide shows that even though I cannot find a number 18 on the Department of Planning website, but here it's referring to a notice transfer of number 18 Places Point. So I'm not sure how this has happened or how this is actually legal or is in.
Please repeat that for me.
As I was saying, there is a number 18 Places Point, but I cannot find a number 18 on the Department of Planning's website to verify that this is where this property is located. But as you can see on this dated the 25th of June, 2002, it says number 18 Places Point. So either it's a typographical error and it should say 16 Places Point, but at this point in time, it says number 18 Places Point. And this is the information that I found at the Land Title Registry Office.
But no formal request was made of you of the legal officer or anyone else here. You're just relying on what's online.
That's
in
correct.
this regard. Okay. So is there any concern you have? Well, I know you have stated either typo or something else. So you believe that something needs to be done to address what seems to be an inconsistency here.
That's correct, Counsel.
All right, well.
Next slide, 207.
I'm sorry, and that was slide 206.
That's correct. And this is another map of showing number 16 Places Point and number 18 if it exists. Next slide.
Slide 208.
Yes, so slide 208 is the letter that I alluded to earlier from my grandmother to Mr. S. Rattery, Minister of Planning. And it's dated to June 29th, 1978. Dear sir, with reference to our conversation on June 20th, 1978 about the building erected on my land at Places Point, Spanish Point, Pembroke by Mr. Kenneth Simmons, I went back to Appley, Sperling, and Kemp as you suggested to see about taking out an injunction against Mr. Simmons erecting this building. This is in the process of being done and will be an injunction on the whole property of Places Point. And I would appreciate it if no permits were issued until this matter is completely settled. Yours sincerely, Margaret Genevieve Hollis, signed by her, CC to Mr. E. Adley, Planning Department, and CC Appley, Sperling, and Kemp.
Thank you. The note at the top of the page says number 16 and 18 Places Point. In terms of the letter on the right-hand side of slide 208, it refers to both, or is it referring to one?
It's referring to number 16, but number 18 is part of, if it exists, as I mentioned earlier.
Right.
I'm not sure if number 18 was a typo and should have included number 16. Should have been number 16.
So if listen to this question carefully. If number 18 does not exist, you're going to amend, or you would not be making a claim in that regard because you're not certain if it exists or not. But if it does exist, you're claiming it as part of the families.
That's correct, Counsel.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Next slide. I've been through this slide, so the next slide.
And please remember, all these documents are hard copies at the first opportunity when the Ministry of Health guidelines allow. They are to be hand delivered to the Secretariat, please.
Yes, Counsel. Counsel, before we proceed to the next section, because of COVID, I have in my possession which I can provide. It's a letter dated August 28th, 1975. And it's addressed to my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis, P.O. Box 1612, Hamilton 5. And it says, Dear Miss Hollis, this is in response to your...
All right, we don't have that document,
No, you don't.
but you wish to place reliance on it. What document is that?
So
What does it refer to?
this is a letter dated August 28th, 1975 from Kay Simmons to my grandmother.
And who is Simmons?
I'm Kenneth Simmons of number 16 Places Point.
Okay. Well, proceed, provided, I was not aware of this, but provided as I say, we're going to finish in 20 minutes, but go ahead.
It says, it says Yellowstone, Spanish Point, Pembroke 5-51 dated the 28th of August, 1975. It's addressed to my grandmother, Miss Margaret Genevieve Hollis, P.O. Box 1612, Hamilton 5. Dear Miss Hollis, this is in response to your To Whom It May Concern notice in the Royal Gazette of August 16th, 1975. I own property at Places Point, and I have deeds and various other significant documents which substantiate and I feel secure my ownership position. If amongst the certain legal documents showing claim to various lots of land in Bosses Cove and Burnt House Places Point area, you possess deeds or other overriding documents, I respectfully request you to contact me by September 30th, 1975, as it would then be my intention to take legal advice on this matter. Sincerely, Kay Simmons.
Now, that document, could you just remind us of the date?
It is August 28th, 1975.
And it is the person who sent it to your grandmother, her name is? His name is
Kenneth, it's signed Kay Simmons. Kay Simmons says he owns property at Places Point. My grandmother would have been referring to number 16 Places Point, and at that time it was Mr. Kenneth Simmons.
Okay. Chairman, I just asked that the letter dated the 28th of August 1975. It is addressed to, well, it is signed by K. Simmons, and it is addressed to your grandmother. Her full name is
Margaret Genevieve Hollis.
And as that document with tender admitted as exhibit VF20.
Yes, counsel, you're asking that letter from signed by Mr. K. Simmons sent to the grandmother of Ms. Franco regarding property and Places Point, letter dated August 28, 1975. That letter be tendered and evidence as VF20.
Thank you. Now, Miss Franco, what's the purpose of showing us this letter? What is and the relevance of the letter being written to your grandmother?
The relevance of this letter, as the K. Simmons persons indicated, that they have title deeds and legal ownership of the property at number 16 Places Point.
Okay. And you're disputing that. Well, you're saying that's the reason why they wrote to your grandmother based on her notice in the newspaper.
That's correct, counsel.
Okay, thank you. Please forward that document to the secretariat.
Yes, Council. We will proceed to the next section, which is slide 212. And this refers to number 1 Newman Lane, Pembroke. I would like to say that I need to clarify that the number 1 outlined in this diagram is incorrect. It should be number 1 on the far right bottom. That should be number 1 Newman's Lane. And as you see, it says Newman Lane on the side road.
Well, just for clarity, the slide 212 has 2 number 1s. It also has a Newman Lane and it has a Seagull Lane. You're saying that you would like to draw the commissioner's attention to where the cursor is, and you would like your red line to be around where the cursor is and not where it is on Seagull Lane. That's what you're saying?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. All right, please proceed.
So number 1 Newman Lane, Pembroke. This property was willed to my great-grandmother, Charlotte Ellis Wood Wellman. On her death, in her last will and testament dated the 7th of February, 1967, left the property to her daughter, my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Hollis Nee Wellman, who has interest real property and conveyed to her daughter, Cecilia Lynn Trinette Can, who is the current owner. Next slide. This is a land transfer notice. Dated the 7th of August, 2018. It says vesting assent. Name is Robert Everton Maury Kennedy. And it says Portside Lower North Apartment. This is the service address, Table Rock Avenue, Pembroke. But this is saying that he has a vested interest in number 1 Newman Lane, and that he acquired it from John Arthur Maury Kennedy and Calvin Raymond Wellman, executors of the estate of Ines Ruth Caroline Kennedy, deceased. Assessment number 123455014. And there is no purchase price as this was a transfer. It's dated the 28th of September, 2018 by the law firm MJM Limited.
Thank you.
Next slide. And here is the schedule of the property in question, number 1 Newman Lane, Pembroke. Next slide.
And just for clarity, when you mentioned earlier how the property 1 Newman Lane has changed hands, you would direct us, I don't need you to do it now, but the will that already you made reference to on a previous presentation, the will and the disposition of this property, we will see it in the will. That will show that this is something that was vested in your family before, correct?
That's correct, Council.
Okay.
And Council, if I got a repeat of the slide number, please.
It's 215.
215, thank you.
Chairman. You may proceed, Madam.
On this slide, you would see on the far right property in question on number 1 Newman Lane and how it is located in reference to the Spanish Point Road. Next slide.
Slide 216.
216. Here is a Bank of Bermuda letter to my grandmother dated November 22nd, 2004, advising her loan was paid and her deeds have held security for number 1 Newman's Lane was ready for collection. She had put up her deeds for number 1 Newman's Lane to secure another property.
And you have the hard copy of this document,
Yes, Counsel.
and you rely on this document. Well, we know the obvious reason it's from the bank in terms of security, but how does this connect to your claim?
It connects to my claim that my grandmother owned the property and this property actually has been conveyed to my aunt, Lynn Cecilia Shanette Can.
Okay.
Next slide. Here is the deed receipt from Trotton Duncan to my grandmother in reference to the property number 1 Newman's Lane, and it states number 1, a copy conveyance dated the 20th of April, John Henry Saunders and Eliza Letitia Chapman Saunders to Arthur James Saunders, and then last will of testament dated the 19th of November, 1923 of James Arthur Saunders, a petition deed dated the 19th of September, 1928 between Edith Amelia Beek and others to Nicholas Bayard Dill, voluntary conveyance dated the 16th of July, 1951 of Charlotte Ellis Wood Wellman to Margaret Genevieve Hollis. And then a memorandum of deposit of deed dated the 21st of September, Bank of Bermuda Limited, and Margaret Genevieve A. Hollis, signed the 12th of February, 2004. So these were her deed receipts returned to her for the above mentioned property.
Thank you.
Slide 2018. And here's
Slide 2018. No, 218.
sorry, 218, sorry. Memorandum of voluntary conveyance dated the 15th of July, 2003 from my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Anastasia Hollis, to my aunt, Cecilia Lynn Shanette Can, Elisa Marie Can, and Andrea Carol Jean Can. This was done through Trotton Duncan. It was registered November 25th, 2005.
No, I'm not certain if I missed it, but just please provide some guidance. In terms of 1 Newman Lane that you're referring to and where you're showing us by reference the letter from the bank, you showed us earlier these documents evidencing ownership. Has anyone ever claimed this 1 Newman Lane?
Yes, from the back a few presentations where I showed you that on page 213, where Robert Everton Murray Candy said that he has ownership of this property through a vesting assent from the estate of Ines Ruth Caroline Kennedy, deceased.
So slide 213, exhibit VF5. Okay. Okay, so we did earlier. And certainly from your standpoint, could you take us to the
218.
where we have the, no, sorry, stop 217. I'm sorry, probably could it go back again to the Bank of Bermuda document? I'm sorry. That's 216, is it? Yes.
Yes.
And you're saying certainly what the claim that is being made on 213, you're saying your point is that it is certainly not in keeping with this document that is evidence here at slide 216.
That's correct, Counsel. My brother used the deeds to number 1 Newman's Lane to secure a loan for another property.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Could go back to 218.
218, to reiterate, this is a voluntary conveyance dated the 15th of June, 2003 from my grandmother to her daughter, Cecilia Lynn, Shanat Can, and others. 219. And this shows a member of Deposit of Deeds signed by my grandmother. And this is for reference purposes. The schedule refers to a document dated the 19th of September, 1928. Edith Amelia Beek, should say, and others to Nicholas Bayard Deal partition. On the 16th of July, 1951, Charlotte Ellis Wood Wellman to Margaret Genevieve, voluntary conveyance.
Okay. Could I just ask, thank you. In relation to slide 213, Secretary, could you advise whether or not adverse notice has previously been sent to Robert Everton Murray Kennedy and Calvin, well, the executors of the estate of Inez Ruth Caroline Kennedy? And while the Secretariat looks for that, more importantly, Ms. Franco, notwithstanding any claim made by Robert Murray that we see at slide 213, the fact is Mrs. Khan is in possession and physical occupation of that premises now, but you're just trying to show us what had happened where someone else was trying to claim that which you own. Is that it?
Yes, Counsel, and further clarification, they also occupy, so we don't actually have possession of the property. We own it, but once again, we don't have possession of the property.
Okay, so wait, that's even more interesting. One Newman Lane that is referenced on slide 213, and where you showed us the Bank of Bermuda document on slide 216. Your claim is that that is evidence and proof of ownership, but presently 1 Newman Lane is not occupied by you.
It's not occupied not occupied by us, and we want to clarify ownership so that we can take possession of the property.
Okay. Who occupies that property now at 1 Newman Lane?
Aunt Lynn, can you clarify?
Ask witness Cecilia Lynn to speak.
Councillor, the property at this is Cecilia Lynn Can, and the property at this time, because of my mother and my grandmother at the time, other members of her family, my grandmother's family, were occupying the home, and some of the relatives are not well, so they did ask that they wanted to stay there. In fact, they even wanted to buy it. But I refused to sell it at the time because some things needed to, bonders and things needed to be sorted out. So this is the reason why other extended members of the family are living there at this particular time in the homestead, but others have taken over other parts of the property, and a house was also built on the right-of-way.
Okay, a very pertinent question. In terms of how long has this taken place for? Can you give us a timeline? Is it less than 21 years
Well,
or more than 21 years?
My mother died in June 2007, and she was Margaret Genevieve Hollis, Anastasia Hollis, and Nee Wellman, daughter of Charlotte Wellman. And as a result, you were asking the date of her death from my niece a little while ago. So that's why I put that in.
Okay, well, what I'd ask you, two things. One, we still haven't gotten a name of the persons. I know there seem to be a number of different persons who are there.
Well, yes, there. As far as I know, there are relatives which are Virgils of the, and they are the ancestry of my grandmother, Beek sister. And the other involved would be Kennedy,
Okay.
As well as, yes,
Okay, and
Arthur
just finally,
Kennedy, which would be, I'm sorry.
About that's fine. I interrupted you. I'm sorry. About what time can you say? Can you give an estimation as to about when
How long?
persons that asked for an extension to stay there? When was this?
Yes, this was around the time that my mother passed,
Okay.
in 2007. And
Okay.
of course, I know they have family members there that are not well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Hollis?
Council,
Sorry. Oh,
of the Secretariat, I can confirm that the estate of Inez Ruth Carolyn Kennedy has been served an adverse notice.
thank you.
However, the executors of the estate individually have not.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Anything from you, Mr. Hollis? Your sister is on her final lap. She's going to give us her parting submissions. Would you wish to add anything before she does so? Yes. Not hearing from Mr. Hollis. You may proceed, Ms. Franco.
Okay, can we go back to the presentation, please? Next slide. Next slide. Here is the conveyance dated the 16th of July, 1951 from Charlotte Wellman, my great-grandmother, to my grandmother, Margaret Genevieve Anastasia Hollis, her daughter. And we can fast forward to slide 223. And here is a copy of the voluntary conveyance, which was done in 1951. It looks like July 16th. Received payment by Carney Steel and Pierman the 31st of October, 1952.
So I'm just going to just indicate what you're showing us now. The other slides, you have already spoken to us about one Newman Lane. You're now showing us documentation in support of the very same thing.
That's correct.
All right, so just take us, you could just take us, we won't need to read all of them. You could just take us through
Sure.
quickly.
This is from my grandmother to Kanye Steel Impairment. She paid £7.50 for the drawing of the voluntary conveyance from Charlotte Ellis Wood to herself, my grandmother.
Okay.
And this dated the 18th of June, 1952.
Are there any other, so I'm sorry for interrupting. Are there any other properties that you, because what you could do is just show us the pages, because we have been going once again for 2 hours, and we try to ensure everybody don't lose everyone.
Sure.
The pages that refer to 1 Newman Lane.
We're actually done, Council, for number 1 Newman Lane.
Okay.
The else is just a conveyance of the land from one person to another.
Oh, so that is what, for the remainder of the slides, you want to show us a conveyance from one person to another.
That's basically what they are, which we can skip because I've already proved that my grandmother and my aunt have ownership.
Right, yes, we don't need to go through. So just for clarity, the remainder of the slides from where we are at 223 to the end of the presentation at 263 is just showing us the thread of the conveyance.
That's correct, Council.
Okay, what I'm going to invite you to do now then, I'm just going to invite you to make closing submissions in this regard in this matter. You have, from my count, and forgive me, you have made reference to 1 Newman Lane. You have made reference to Buses Cove and numbers 7, 11, 16, 18, 13, 7, 11, 13, 16, 18, Buses Cove.
Council, can I correct you there, please? It's number.
I'd like you to, please.
It's number 13 is presently owned by our family, which is not in contention.
Right.
Number 11, number 9, number 7, number 18 of Bosses Cove is the properties in which I hold the deeds to.
Yes.
We also spoke about High Point Lane, High Point Road, which is also part of the estate of Anne Amelia Wood.
Yes.
We spoke about number 16 and number 18 of Places Point. And last but not least, number 1 Newman Lane.
And what is it in terms of closing would you wish to say to the commissioners in relation to these submissions that you have made in respect of these plots of land? I would call them that, for want of a better term.
My submission is that for every property that I have mentioned, our family are the legal owners, and the persons who presently occupy and or say that they own these properties, I would like for them to submit their proof.
No, thank you. No, earlier, go ahead.
And as my grandmother mentioned earlier in one of her letters, as far as she knows of the law, how can someone say they own a property? As far as she knows, there's not 2 sets of deeds for one particular property.
Okay, so you say that to say that if you're in possession of the deeds, there can't be another set. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned, when you mentioned deeds on the last occasion, you had indicated, not on an occasion prior to this, you had indicated that you had some deeds. Some of them were in a state that had not been you're not able to put them together, you're still at that position. So what you have submitted is what you're going to rely on, correct?
That's correct. The parts that I have put together, I can make out names of the persons who own the property, but unfortunately, I cannot
Okay,
decipher too much of the information.
thank you. Is there anything you wish to say in closing before I invite Mrs. Khan and Mr. Hollis, if he's still on, to offer a final word?
I would like to say thank you to all the commissioners for giving myself, my brother, Mr. Hugh Hollis, and my aunt, Cecilia Lynn Can, a voice to our historic land laws. And we hope that we have presented our case in such that the evidence were clear enough to substantiate our claim and the fact that we still have deeds or in our possession to these properties.
Thank you very much, Madam. And thank you for your industry in terms of your research. Could I invite Mrs. Khan? Would you wish to say anything, or you wish to rely on what has been said by Ms. Franco?
I would like to say thank you to everybody that has been involved, and especially to our government, who has stood by and made sure that this happened. And I'm sure that others who may not have had an opportunity to put their case forward, I hope they are encouraged to do so, so that we can have a Bermuda that is a more united Bermuda and a more peaceable Bermuda than what it's been in the past as a result of this land disputes. I just want to say this, that I grew up when there wasn't any a lot of houses on the property in Bosses Cove, and it was Spanish Point, and we were a community. And I know that during those days, there was a lot of respect, and there's still a lot of respect probably today. And I'm going to make it short, as short as I can. But I want to say this, that I do know that people came to my Aunt Charlotte Oates. I was there when they came and asked permission to use her property and to use the properties throughout Shore Park when there were no houses built on there. And she took ownership of those properties and gave permission for camps and other community things to happen there in Spanish Point and at her own property, weddings and other occasions. Why would people say they own property when we have the deeds and come and ask permission to use that property?
Thank you very
If we
much,
didn't
Madam.
own.
Thank you. Is Mr. Hollis still with us? Would you wish to offer a final comment, or would you wish to rely on Ms. Franco and Mrs. Khan? Okay. Thank you. No response. Thank you very much for your presentation. Chairman, Commissioners, Secretary, that is it for today. I'd ask that we take the adjournment unless, I'm sorry, most importantly, Commissioners have questions.
I'll speak up first as chair. First of all, I want to thank the witnesses for the presentations thus far, and keeping in mind that we will get the hard copies of exhibits that have been tendered in this, especially in this last session. I believe that the commissioners are going to reserve any further probing after they've perused those exhibits. I will ask counsel for some direction at this point as to what the procedure is going to be for those persons who have been served adverse notice. I do know that we had a process where in other matters, people who had been served adverse notice did give evidence. Do we have a timeline for response, number one? And two, counsel, can you give us further direction as to when we would resume to hear those adverse notices or responders if they so wish.
Chairman, in terms of a timeline, I'll answer in a general way. We certainly had afforded persons an opportunity to respond. That time has passed. However, there is a check and balance, if you want to call it that, in terms of our procedure, that if the commissioners are minded to and do in fact make a finding which is adverse, we're duty bound to once again write to them and give them notice of the adverse finding that may be made and give them an opportunity to respond. At that time, we'll also give them a similar timeline within which to respond before a final report is shared with the Honorable Premier and is made public by whatever process that will be undertaken. So there's a check and balance, but it will be done again.
All right, then, Council, barring any further questions by my two commissioners, and I will reiterate that 3 persons set as a quorum for this Commission of Inquiry in this matter, and they were myself, Mr. Main Parent Chief, Mr. Stovall, and Mr. Starling. We set as a Commission of Inquiry for this matter. And if any of those gentlemen now, Mr. Stovall or Mr. Starling, wish you have a quick question, keeping in mind the caveat that Council had given us, I wish for you to do so now.
I reserve comment at this time or question.
I similarly withhold comment for now. Thank you.
Yes, having heard that response, Council, I'm at a position now to convene this particular hearing
Chair,
and give you the final response.
Thank you very much. I just ask that, once again, thanking all the parties and commissioners, and of course the Secretariat and the technical team. I'd ask that we could take the adjournment now.
Mr. Harrison,
I'm sorry, Ms. Franco.
Sorry, Mr. Harrison, before we close, my brother did want to say something. He was supposed to sign back in. He was on mute.
Okay.
Yes, Council, I'm open to hearing comments from
Certainly, Chairman.
Mr. Hollis, yes.
This is Stephen Simons from the Secretariat. I can advise that Mr. Hollis is not currently in this meeting. So maybe if we give him a few minutes to join in.
Yes, he was signing in. You just give him a few minutes, please. Council, he signed in.
Thank you. Mr. Hollis?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We're inviting you to offer final comments. We are at that point where we have heard from Mrs. Khan, as also Ms. Franco, your sister. Would you wish to offer any comments in closing?
No, I just would like to simply say, and for the record, my name is Hugh Stanford Hollis. I would like to thank the commission and council and the commissioners for staging this process. Obviously, we've had the opportunity on behalf of our relatives and ancestors to present our case. We look forward to seeing what the next steps are. And if you have any additional questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. I think my sister did a very good job presenting, and I'm sure as part of the final commission's report, they will maybe hopefully take some of the things that she mentioned back that will help the process in for future inquiries like this. So thank you for the process of going through this process with us.
Thank you. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So we take the adjournment now, Chairman.
Yes, counsel and witnesses, thank you once again. And at this point, we will adjourn this particular hearing of the Franco matter 024 in our registry. And we will adjourn until further notice. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you so much.
afternoon.
Thank
You
you.
too.